The docking clamps locked into place with a heavy metallic thud that echoed through the hull of the Horizon's Edge. Harin felt the vibration through the deck plates beneath her boots as she stood in the cargo bay, checking her equipment one last time. Her fingers moved automatically across the tools on her belt, counting them off by touch. Plasma cutter, molecular welder, diagnostic scanner, emergency breather. Everything was in place. Nervous? Bora appeared beside her, medical kit slung over one shoulder. The doctor's dark eyes searched Harin's face with the familiar concern of a friend who knew her too well. Harin shook her head. Just ready to get this over with. I don't like stations. Too many things that can go wrong with artificial gravity and life support. Bora laughed softly. You're an engineer. Everything can go wrong everywhere. Exactly. Captain Taeyang's voice crackled through the ship's communication system. All crew to the main airlock. We dock in 5 minutes. Remember, we're here to negotiate, not to make enemies. The Kix Dominion controls 17 systems we need access to. Be polite. Be professional. Harin and Bora made their way through the narrow corridors to join the captain and Hyunwoo at the airlock. The weapons specialist was already there, looking uncomfortable in his formal uniform instead of his usual combat gear. He pulled at his collar and grimaced. I hate diplomacy, Hyunwoo muttered. Give me a straight fight any day. Taeyang turned to face his small crew. The captain was a tall man with silver threading through his black hair, and his face bore the calm expression of someone who had navigated worse situations than this. We've been part of the Galactic Council for 12 years. 12 years and half the species out there still treat us like children who wandered into an adult conversation. Today we show them that humanity deserves to be here. The airlock door hissed open, revealing the pristine white corridor of Concord Prime beyond. The station was massive, a rotating wheel of metal and composite materials hanging in neutral space at the edge of known territories. Thousands of species passed through its halls every day, trading goods and information, settling disputes, making alliances, and now humanity was here, trying to claim its place among them. A figure waited for them in the corridor. It stood on 2 legs like a human, but that was where the similarities ended. Its skin was smooth and gray with large black eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. It wore a translator device around its neck that glowed with soft blue light. Welcome to Concord Prime, the alien said through its translator, the words coming out in perfect standard English. I am Attendant Mira. I will escort you to the negotiation chamber. Please follow me. They walked through corridors filled with beings Harin had only seen in training videos, creatures with too many legs or no legs at all, beings made of what looked like living crystal, others that seemed to be just clouds of gas held together in containment suits. Every single one of them turned to stare at the humans as they passed. They're all looking at us, Bora whispered. Let them look, Taeyang replied quietly. We belong here as much as anyone. The negotiation chamber was a large circular room with a table made of dark metal at its center. Screens covered the walls, displaying star charts and resource data. Already seated on one side of the table were the representatives from the Kix Dominion. Harin had seen images of the Kix before, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of them. They were huge, easily 3 meters tall even when seated. Their bodies were covered in crystalline exoskeletons that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. They had 8 limbs, each one ending in a wicked-looking claw that could probably cut through steel. Multiple eyes clustered at the top of their bodies, all of them fixed on the human delegation as they entered. The largest of the Kix leaned forward. When it spoke, its translator gave its voice a harsh grating quality. So, these are the humans. How small. Taeyang moved to his seat without acknowledging the comment. Harin, Bora, and Hyunwoo took positions standing behind him as protocol required. Harin activated her neural interface, letting her consciousness expand to touch the station's systems. Information flowed into her mind. Life support optimal. Gravity stable. No immediate threats. But something felt wrong. The Kix delegates were positioning themselves aggressively, not as negotiators but as conquerors. I am Captain Taeyang of the Horizon's Edge, representing the Human Colonial Authority. We're here to discuss mining rights in the Tertian Belt systems. The large Kix made a sound that might have been laughter. Its translator rendered it as a series of harsh clicks. I am Velthar, primary speaker for the Kix Dominion, and you are primitives who have barely learned to leave your world. The Tertian Belt has been Kix territory for 3,000 of your years. The Galactic Council's survey shows that the Tertian Belt was unclaimed space until human explorers mapped it 6 months ago, Tae-Yang said calmly. Under Council law, first mapping grants provisional claims. Velthar's claws clicked against the metal table, leaving small scratches. Council law. How amusing. The Council made a mistake allowing your species membership. You should still be in your nursery world playing with fire and stones. Harin felt her jaw tighten. She'd heard this kind of talk before, but never so directly, never in an official negotiation. Around the room, other observers from various species watched silently. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed to be enjoying the show. Tae-Yang's voice remained steady. Personal opinions aside, Speaker Velthar, we have legitimate claims supported by Council Charter. I have the survey data here. He gestured for Harin to bring up the files on the chamber's main screen. She moved to the control panel, her fingers flying across the interface. The screen lit up with detailed maps, mineral assessments, and legal documentation. Everything was in order. Everything proved humanity's claim was valid. Velthar didn't even look at the screen. Your species has barely crawled from your gravity well. You are animals playing at civilization. The Council erred in granting you even provisional status. Animals should not be allowed to claim anything. The room went completely silent. Even the other observers seemed shocked by the direct insult. Harin's hands froze over the control panel. She looked at her captain, but Tae-Yang's face showed nothing. He was playing the diplomat, refusing to take the bait. Bora tried a different approach. She stepped forward slightly, her voice gentle but professional. Perhaps we could discuss contamination protocols. If there are concerns about human presence in the Tertian Belt, we could agree to specific safety measures that would satisfy both parties. Velthar's claw came down hard on the table. The metal shrieked and buckled under the impact. Deep gouges appeared where the crystalline claw had struck, and the claw itself stopped just centimeters from Bora's hand, which had been resting near some documents. Bora jerked back, her face pale. Animals should not speak unless commanded, Velthar hissed. All 8 of its limbs tensed, claws extended. You understand nothing. You are nothing. This negotiation is a waste of time. The Dominion will take what it wants, and there is nothing your pathetic species can do to stop us. Harin felt something cold settle in her chest. It wasn't anger exactly. It was clarity. She'd spent 5 years working on colony ships, building homes for humans on new worlds. She'd survived 3 different system failures, saved 47 lives during a reactor breach on Mars Station, and earned her combat engineering certification in the top 2% of her class. She'd worked harder than almost anyone she knew to get here, to be part of humanity's push into the stars. And this creature thought she was an animal. She looked at the claw still extended toward Bora, looked at the way Velthar held itself, all arrogance and certainty. Her neural interface was still active, still feeding her data, and part of that data included biological scans of everyone in the room, standard station security protocols. She could see the structure of Velthar's exoskeleton, could see the stress points, the places where the crystalline armor was thinner, where joints connected, could see exactly how much force would be required to break it. Harin started walking toward Velthar. Harin! Tae-Yang's voice held a note of warning, but he didn't order her to stop. She kept walking, her boots clicking softly on the chamber floor. Every eye in the room followed her. She walked around the table until she stood directly in front of the massive Kix diplomat. She had to tilt her head back to look up at its clustered eyes. You believe we're animals? She asked quietly. Velthar's translator rendered what might have been amusement. I know you are. Harin smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then you won't mind if I behave like one. Her hand shot out and grabbed Velthar's extended claw before anyone could react. Velthar's claw was cold under Harin's fingers. The crystalline surface was smooth except for the sharp edge designed for cutting. She could feel the alien's surprise ripple through its body as she gripped the claw firmly, her enhanced strength keeping it locked in place. Foolish creature, Velthar said, and this time its voice held genuine amusement. My exoskeleton can withstand temperatures that would melt your flesh. The molecular bonds in my claws are stronger than any material your primitive species has. Harin twisted. She used every lesson she'd learned in combat engineering school, every principle of leverage and force distribution. Her neural interface fed her real-time data about structural stress points. She could see exactly where the claw connected to Velthar's limb, could calculate the precise angle needed to compromise the joint. Her muscles, enhanced with the standard modifications all combat engineers receive for working in variable gravity, provided more than enough power. The sound was horrible, a crack like breaking glass but deeper, more resonant. The crystalline structure of Velthar's exoskeleton simply couldn't handle the force applied at that specific angle. At that specific point, the claw came free in Harin's hand. Ichor, thick and purple, sprayed across the polished floor. Velthar's scream was a sound Harin would remember for the rest of her life. It wasn't translated by the device. It was pure primal pain that needed no words. The Kix diplomat stumbled backward. Its remaining claws scrabbled at the table for support. The other Kix delegates surged to their feet, clicking and hissing in their own language. Around the room, observers from a dozen different species stood in shock. Harin held up the severed claw. It was longer than her forearm, curved and wickedly sharp. Purple ichor dripped from the broken end. She examined it calmly as if she were looking at a broken tool in her workshop, rather than a piece of a living being. "Funny," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent chamber. "The animal still has all her limbs. How about you?" She dropped the claw onto the negotiation table. It landed with a heavy thunk, skittering across the surface and coming to rest in front of where Captain Tae-yang sat. The chamber erupted into chaos. Security officers poured through the doors. Harin counted 6 different species among them, all armed with various weapons. The largest was a reptilian creature nearly as tall as the Kix, covered in scales that looked like armor plating. It had a weapon raised and aimed directly at Harin's head. "Nobody move," the reptilian shouted through its translator. "Security Chief Cross, Concord Prime Authority. Everyone will remain exactly where they are." Harin didn't move. She didn't raise her hands or try to flee. She simply stood there, wiping purple ichor off her fingers with a cleaning cloth from her engineering kit. Her broken fingers throbbed, but she didn't let the pain show on her face. Bora would fix them later. Velthar was surrounded by its fellow Kix, all of them clicking frantically. Medical drones were already flying into the room, their scanners analyzing the injured diplomat. One of the Kix delegates pointed at Harin with multiple claws. "That human attacked our speaker without provocation. This is an act of war. The Kix Dominion demands immediate silence." A new voice cut through the noise. An elderly insectoid being floated into the chamber on a hovering platform. Its body was small and fragile-looking, but everyone in the room immediately went quiet. Harin recognized it from the briefing files. Ambassador Thel, one of the Galactic Council's senior mediators. The insectoid's translator rendered its clicks and whistles into calm, measured words. "I have been monitoring this negotiation from the observation room. I saw everything. Security Chief Cross, lower your weapon. The human is not attempting to flee or cause further harm." Cross, the reptilian, hesitated for a moment before lowering his weapon, but he didn't holster it. Ambassador Thel's platform floated closer to where Velthar was being tended by the medical drones. "Speaker Velthar, you physically struck the negotiation table in a threatening manner. Your claw came within centimeters of striking a member of the human delegation. You verbally degraded an entire species repeatedly. You violated at least 7 protocols of diplomatic conduct. That thing tore off my claw." Velthar's voice was weak, filtered through pain. "After you threatened violence," Ambassador Thel replied. "The recordings will be reviewed by the Council. Until then, all parties will withdraw. Medical attention will be provided to Speaker Velthar. The human delegation will return to their ship. We will reconvene when the Council has made its assessment." Harin finally moved, turning and walking back to where Captain Tae-yang stood. Her captain's face was carefully neutral, but she could see something in his eyes. Not anger, not disappointment. Something else. Maybe respect. Maybe concern. Possibly both. "Captain," she said quietly, "I believe our position in these negotiations has improved." Tae-yang didn't respond. He simply gestured for his crew to follow him out of the chamber. They walked through corridors that now seemed even more crowded than before. Word had spread fast. Aliens of every description stopped to stare at the humans passing by. Some looked horrified. Others looked curious. A few looked almost impressed. Back on the horizon's edge, Tae-yang finally spoke. "Medical bay. Now." Bora was already pulling Harin toward the ship's small medical facility. Hyunwoo followed, leaving the captain alone in the corridor. In the medical bay, Bora scanned Harin's hand with practiced efficiency. 2 fractured fingers, muscle strain, minor tissue damage. You're lucky you didn't break your whole hand. I calculated the force requirements precisely, Harin said. Bora activated the bone knitter, a device that used targeted energy beams to accelerate healing. You tore off an alien diplomat's claw in front of witnesses from 30 different species. Do you have any idea what you've done? Harin watched as the device worked on her fingers. The pain was already fading. I defended a member of my crew who was threatened, and I showed that creature that humans aren't as weak as it thought. You might have started a war, or prevented one. Yun-Woo leaned against the wall, arms crossed, but he was grinning. The station's communication networks are going crazy. I've been monitoring the chatter. Multiple species are talking about what happened, and here's the interesting part. A lot of them aren't talking about you. They're talking about Velthar. What do you mean? Bora asked, not looking up from her work. Turns out our friend the speaker has been insulting everyone. 3 different species have lodged formal complaints against the Kicks in the past year alone. Velthar called the Akwans water-dwelling parasites. Told the Metharians they were barely sentient gas clouds. Cohen suggested the Draconians were primitive lizards with delusions of grandeur. Harin raised an eyebrow. So I'm not the first one he's insulted. No, but you're the first one who did anything about it. Hyun-Woo's grin widened. Half the station thinks you're a savage. The other half thinks you're a hero. And the Kicks have officially lodged a complaint with the council. Of course they have, Bora muttered. But so have the Draconians, against the Kicks. They're saying Velthar's behavior has been unacceptable for years and they support a full investigation into Kicks' diplomatic conduct. Harin flexed her newly healed fingers. Bora's work was excellent, as always. What about Captain Tae Yang? He's in his quarters. He told me to tell you he wants to see you in an hour. After Hyun-Woo and Bora left, Harin sat alone in the medical bay. She looked at her hands. They were engineers' hands, scarred from years of work, strong from handling tools and materials. They'd built things, fixed things, saved lives, and now they'd hurt someone. She told herself that Velthar had threatened Bora, that the Kicks diplomat had been aggressive and hostile, that she'd had no choice, but that wasn't entirely true. She could have stepped back, could have let Captain Tae Yang handle it diplomatically, could have reported Velthar's behavior to station security. Instead, she'd made a choice, a violent choice. Had she proved that humans deserved respect, or had she proved Velthar right, that humans were just animals pretending to be civilized? Her neural interface pinged. A message from the captain. Just 2 words. My quarters. Harin stood and made her way through the ship. She found Tae Yang in his small office, staring at a screen showing news feeds from across the station. He gestured for her to sit. The Galactic Council wants you to testify, he said without preamble. Tomorrow? They're convening an emergency session to review what happened. I understand. Harin. The captain turned to look at her directly. What you did today will have consequences. For you, for this ship, maybe for all of humanity. Did you think about that before you grabbed that claw? She met his eyes. Yes. And you did it anyway. He threatened Bora. He called us animals. He made it clear the Kicks would take whatever they wanted regardless of council law. Harin paused. Someone had to show them we won't just accept that. Tae Yang was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be difficult. The entire Galactic Council will be judging not just you, but our entire species based on what you did today. Harin left the captain's quarters and returned to her own small cabin. She lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling and wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Or the best decision she'd ever made. The council chamber was the largest room Harin had ever seen. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above, and the walls curved away in a perfect circle that could have fit a small city inside. Thousands of seats rose in tiers around a central platform where she now stood, alone, with what felt like a million eyes watching her. Not all of them were actually eyes, she reminded herself. Some species perceived the world through different senses entirely. But they were all focused on her, the human who had dismembered a diplomat. Ambassador Thel sat in a raised position above the others, its ancient insectoid body supported by its hovering platform. Around the chamber, representatives from hundreds of species waited. Some she recognized from the briefing files, most she'd never seen before. Engineer Harin of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. Ambassador Thel's voice echoed through the chamber. You stand before the Galactic Council to give testimony regarding the incident with Speaker Velthar of the Kix Dominion. Do you understand why you are here? Yes, Ambassador. Harin's voice sounded small in the vast space, but the chamber's acoustic systems carried it clearly to every listener. Before we begin, we will review the security recordings of the negotiation. The lights dimmed, holographic projectors activated, filling the air above Harin's head with a three-dimensional recreation of yesterday's events. She watched herself from multiple angles as the scene played out. Velthar's insults, the threatened strike at Bora, her own calm walk across the chamber, the grab, the twist, the horrible sound of breaking crystal, the severed claw falling to the table. It looked worse from the outside, she realized. More brutal, more calculated, because it had been calculated. She'd known exactly what she was doing, exactly how much force to apply, exactly where to grip. The recording ended. The lights came back up. Harin stood very still, waiting. We have heard the Kix delegation's complaint, Ambassador Thel said. They claim you attacked Speaker Velthar without provocation, causing permanent injury. They argue that humans are too violent, too dangerous for council membership. They request that humanity's provisional status be revoked and that you personally face criminal charges for assault. Harin's stomach tightened, but she kept her face neutral. However, Ambassador Thel continued, we have also received testimony from other parties. Security Chief Cross, please come forward. The massive reptilian stepped onto the platform beside Harin. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Each scale on his body looked thick enough to stop a bullet. His claws clicked softly on the floor as he turned to address the council. I am Cross, Security Chief of Concord Prime. I have served in this position for 17 years. I have reviewed the security footage from every angle available. His translator gave his voice a deep, rumbling quality. Speaker Velthar struck the negotiation table with sufficient force to leave permanent damage. His claw came within 2 centimeters of striking the human medical officer. By the laws of Concord Prime, this constitutes assault. Murmurs rippled through the council. Several species began talking among themselves. Cross continued. The human engineer's response was defensive in nature. She neutralized a threat to her crew member. Furthermore, I must note that she demonstrated remarkable restraint. A Kix's primary organs are located in the upper thorax. Had she wished to kill Speaker Velthar, she could have done so easily. Instead, she chose to disable only one limb. Restraint? One of the Kix delegates stood, its voice sharp with anger. She tore off his claw. Yes, Cross replied calmly. 1 claw out of 8. Speaker Velthar will recover fully within 6 weeks. In my culture, we would call this mercy. Another voice spoke up. Harin turned to see a being she didn't recognize. It was vaguely amphibious with moist skin that glistened under the chamber's lights. Its translator gave it a bubbling, watery quality. I am Representative Sula of the Aquan Collective. The Kix delegation speaks of humans being too violent for council membership. But I must point out that Speaker Velthar has a documented history of aggressive behavior toward species he considers inferior. 3 years ago, he called my people parasites during trade negotiations. When I objected, he threatened to have our water worlds quarantined. More murmurs. Harin watched as other representatives began nodding or making gestures of agreement with their various appendages. A draconian stood next, its scales gleaming red and gold. Speaker Velthar called my species primitive lizards. He has insulted at least 12 different civilizations in the past 5 years alone. Perhaps it is not the humans who are the problem here. The Kix delegation was clicking frantically among themselves. One of them stood. This is irrelevant. The human committed violence. The recordings show your speaker violating multiple protocols, Ambassador Thel interrupted. Verbal degradation of other species, physical intimidation, threatening gestures, all of these are forbidden in council negotiations. But the human actually caused harm. Ambassador Thel's platform floated higher. Engineer Harin, you will now give your testimony. Speak truthfully. The council values honesty above all else. Harin took a deep breath. This was it. Whatever she said now would affect not just her, but every human in the galaxy. Ambassador Thel honored members of the council. I am a combat engineer. I build things. I fix things. I keep ships running and colonies alive. Violence is not my first choice. It's not even my 10th choice. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But Speaker Velthar called my species animals. He threatened my friend. He made it clear that he believed humans had no right to exist as equals in this council. And he was wrong. Harin looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes and eye equivalents as she could. Ambassador Thel called us animals, but he's not entirely wrong. Humans are animals. We evolved as persistence hunters on a high-gravity world with extreme climate variations. We're built to endure, to adapt, and to survive. Our planet tried to kill us for millions of years, and we're still here. But being an animal doesn't make us primitive. Every species in this chamber is an animal. We all evolved from something. We all have survival instincts, territorial behaviors, fight-or-flight responses. The difference is what we choose to do with our animal nature. She felt her confidence growing as she spoke. Humans chose cooperation. We built cities and civilizations. We created art and music and science. We reached for the stars not to conquer but to explore. We joined this council not to dominate, but to learn from species wiser and older than ourselves. And yes, we also chose to defend ourselves when threatened. Because that's what intelligent beings do. We don't just accept insults and aggression. We stand up for ourselves and for our friends. Harin pointed at the space where the holographic recording had played. You all saw what happened. Speaker Velthar threatened violence. I responded to that threat. I could have killed him. I could have gone for his primary organs or his neural cluster. But I didn't. I disabled one limb and stopped. That's not savagery. That's control. The chamber was completely silent now. Everyone was listening. If defending my crew makes me unworthy of the council, then so be it. If standing up to bullies means humans should be expelled, then we'll leave. But don't insult us and expect us to simply accept it, because we're new here. We won't, we can't, because we're not just animals. We're human. Harin finished speaking and waited. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone in the chamber must be able to hear it. Ambassador Thel was quiet for a long moment. Then it spoke. The council will debate this matter. Engineer Harin, you may return to your delegation's seating area. The next 3 hours were torture. Harin sat with Captain Tae-yang, Bora, and Hyunwoo in the section reserved for the human delegation. Around them, species argued in dozens of languages. Some demanded harsh punishment. Others defended her actions. The debate grew heated, with representatives shouting over each other and Ambassador Thel repeatedly calling for order. During a recess, Tae-yang leaned close to Harin. You spoke well. Whatever happens, you represented humanity with dignity. I just told the truth, she said. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do. Bora squeezed Harin's hand. I'm proud of you. For what it's worth, Hyunwoo grinned. If they kick us out, at least we'll go out with style. When the council reconvened, Ambassador Thel looked tired. Its translator's tone seemed weary. The council has debated extensively. We have reviewed all evidence and testimony. We have considered the arguments from all parties. Harin held her breath. Our ruling is as follows. Both parties share responsibility for the incident. Speaker Velthar is hereby stripped of his diplomatic credentials for violations of council protocol. He will not be permitted to represent the Kix Dominion in any official capacity for a period of 5 standard years. One of the Kix delegates started to object, but Ambassador Thel continued speaking over them. Engineer Harin will receive a formal censure for her use of physical violence in a diplomatic setting. This censure will remain on her record. However, given the provocation and the restraint she demonstrated in her response, no further punishment will be imposed. Harin felt her knees go weak with relief. Furthermore, Ambassador Thel said, this incident has revealed a larger problem. Several species have come forward with complaints about discrimination and harassment they have faced from older, more established civilizations. The Council therefore votes to establish new protections for provisional species, with stricter consequences for those who violate diplomatic protocols. The chamber erupted in noise again, but this time it sounded different. Less angry, more thoughtful. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, Harin noticed something. Several species were approaching the human delegation. A crystalline being that sparkled like a living diamond, a methane breather in its containment suit, even Representative Sula, the Aquan who had spoken up during the testimony. They wanted to talk, to exchange contact information, to discuss trade agreements and cultural exchanges and military cooperation. Captain Tae-yang handled the conversations with practiced diplomacy. but Harin could see the surprise in his eyes. This wasn't what anyone had expected. On their way out of the chamber, they passed Security Chief Cross. The massive reptilian stopped and looked down at Harin. "You fought when necessary," he said. "You stopped when wise. These are marks of a warrior, not an animal. I hope our species will work together." He extended one clawed hand. Harin shook it carefully, mindful of her still healing fingers. As they walked back toward their ship, Hyunwoo whistled softly. "I think you just changed everything." The aftermath of the council's decision came in waves. First, there were the immediate reactions. News feeds across the station exploded with commentary from hundreds of species. Some praised the council's balanced approach. Others condemned it. But everyone was talking about what had happened. Harin sat in the Horizon's Edge's small common room, watching the screens with her crew. Hyunwoo had set up feeds from a dozen different networks, each showing a different perspective. A Metherian news anchor, its gaseous form swirling inside its containment suit, was interviewing a political analyst. The translator rendered their conversation into text that scrolled across the bottom of the screen. This incident reveals deep divisions within the council. For too long, certain species have behaved as if provisional members exist only to serve their interests. Another feed showed a Kix representative trying to spin the story. Speaker Velthar was merely testing the humans' resolve. How could we know they would respond with such savagery? "Savagery," Bora muttered. "They're still calling us savages." "Let them," Taeyang said. He was reading something on his personal tablet, his expression thoughtful. "What matters is what happens next." "What do you mean?" Harin asked. The captain looked up. "The Tertian Belt negotiations. They resume tomorrow, and guess who won't be there? Speaker Velthar. The Kix have to send a replacement representative, someone who doesn't have Velthar's reputation." Hyunwoo grinned. "So we actually improved our negotiating position." "Maybe. Or maybe the Kix will be even more hostile now." Taeyang set down his tablet. "Either way, we need to be ready." The next morning, Harin woke to find a message waiting on her personal terminal. It was from Security Chief Cross. "Engineer Harin, I request a private meeting. No official business. Simply conversation. If you are willing, come to Observation Deck 7 at noon station time." She showed the message to Captain Taeyang, who considered it for a moment before nodding. "Go, but take your communicator. And if anything feels wrong, leave immediately." Observation Deck 7 was a large, transparent dome that offered a view of the stars beyond the station. When Harin arrived, she found Cross standing alone, looking out at the darkness of space. "Thank you for coming," the reptilian said without turning around. "I was uncertain if you would." "You spoke up for me at the council," Harin replied. "I figured I owed you at least a conversation." Cross turned to face her. Up close, she could see scars on his scales, old wounds from battles she could only imagine. "I spoke truth, not favor. But I am glad you came. I wanted to speak with you away from politics and protocol." "About what?" "About strength." Cross moved to a nearby bench and sat, gesturing for Harin to join him. "In my culture, we value combat prowess above almost everything else. When we first joined the council 300 years ago, we thought ourselves superior because we were strong. We looked down on species that seemed weak." He paused, and Harin thought she could see something like regret in his eyes. "We were wrong. We learned slowly that strength takes many forms. Intelligence is strength. Diplomacy is strength. The ability to adapt and survive is strength. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I see my people's mistakes in humanity. You are young, aggressive, still learning your place. Yesterday, when you disabled Speaker Velthar, part of me cheered. Finally, someone stood up to that arrogant creature. But part of me worried." Cross leaned forward. "Violence is easy, Engineer Harin. Any species can fight. The difficult thing is knowing when to fight and when to talk. I hope humanity learns this faster than my people did." Harin thought about his words. "I didn't want to hurt him. I wanted him to stop insulting us, to take us seriously. And now he will. Now everyone will." Cross stood. "But remember, fear and respect are different things. Fear fades when greater strength appears. Respect lasts because it is earned through consistent action, not single moments of violence." He extended his hand again. "I hope we meet again, Engineer Harin. Perhaps under better circumstances." After Cross left, Harin stayed on the observation deck thinking. She watched ships coming and going from the station, each one carrying its own crew with their own stories. How many of them had faced moments like she had? How many had chosen violence? How many had found another way? The negotiations resumed that afternoon. The new Kix representative was smaller than Velthar and much quieter. Its name was something unpronounceable that the translator rendered as Speaker Tix. Captain Tae Yang opened the session formally. Speaker Tix, welcome. I hope we can approach these negotiations with mutual respect and good faith. Speaker Tix inclined its body in what might have been a bow. Captain Tae Yang, the Kix Dominion, regrets the unfortunate tone of our previous discussions. We are prepared to negotiate according to council law and protocol. The change was remarkable. Where Velthar had been aggressive and dismissive, Speaker Tix was professional and direct. They discussed mining rights, contamination protocols, and profit-sharing arrangements. There were disagreements, certainly, but they were the normal conflicts of negotiation, not personal attacks. 6 months had passed since the incident at Concord Prime. 6 months since Harin had torn off Velthar's claw and changed everything. The horizon's edge approached Earth. Home after a long journey through human-controlled space, Harin stood in the observation deck, watching the blue-green planet grow larger in the viewport. She'd been born on Mars, had spent most of her life on ships and stations, but Earth still felt special. It was where humanity began, where they learned to survive, to build, to dream of the stars. Nervous about the debrief, Bora joined her at the window. A little, Harin admitted. 6 months of diplomatic missions, 53 species contacted, 17 new trade agreements, and everyone still wants to talk about the 30 seconds when I hurt someone. Bora smiled. That's because those 30 seconds mattered, whether we like it or not. The debrief at the Colonial Authority headquarters in Geneva took 3 days. Harin and her crew sat through endless meetings, answering questions, explaining their actions, defending their decisions. The review board was thorough, professional, and completely exhausting. On the final day, the board's chairperson, an elderly woman named Director Kim, addressed them directly. Captain Tae Yang, Engineer Harin, Officers Bora and Hyunwoo, your actions at Concord Prime have had far-reaching consequences, some positive, some complicated. We need you to understand what has happened since you left that station. Director Kim activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the conference table. First, the positive outcomes. Thanks to the precedent you set, the Galactic Council has established the Provisional Species Protection Act. Harassment and discrimination against newer species now carries serious penalties. 3 species who had been suffering under similar treatment to what Speaker Velthar displayed have come forward with complaints. The Council is investigating. More images appeared. Trade routes, resource agreements, cultural exchange programs. The mining rights you negotiated have proven extremely valuable. The rare minerals in the Tertian Belt are crucial for advanced ship construction. We've already begun extraction operations and the revenue is exceeding projections. More importantly, your mission opened doors. Species that previously ignored humanity are now seeking us out. We have new diplomatic relationships with 47 civilizations, military cooperation agreements with 12, and we're receiving requests for human advisors, engineers, and teachers from dozens more. Director Kim paused. However, there are also complications. New images appeared. News feeds. Political debates. Protest demonstrations on various worlds. Some species view humanity as dangerously violent. The Kix Dominion has restricted human access to their territories. 3 other civilizations have expressed similar concerns. There's a growing faction within the Council that wants humanity placed under stricter oversight. The director looked directly at Harin. There's also the matter of your personal reputation, engineer. You've become famous, or infamous depending on who you ask. A series of images showed Harin's face on news feeds across the galaxy. Some praised her, some condemned her. All of them talked about her. We've received 147 requests for you specifically. 32 are engineering consultations, 41 are diplomatic advisor positions, and 74 are combat challenges from warriors across the galaxy who want to test themselves against the human who disabled a Kix. Harin's eyes widened. 74 challenges? Which you will decline, Director Kim said firmly. All of them. You're an engineer, not a gladiator. Yes, Director. However, we do want you to accept some of the consultation requests. Your technical expertise, combined with your unique diplomatic experience, makes you valuable. We're assigning you to a new position, cultural liaison and technical advisor. You'll work with alien species who want to understand humanity better. Haran glanced at Captain Tae Yang, who nodded encouragingly. What about the Horizon's Edge? She asked. What about the crew? The Horizon's Edge is being refitted as a dedicated diplomatic vessel. Captain Tae Yang will continue commanding her. You'll all work together, but with a broader mission. Not just trade negotiations, but building relationships, showing the galaxy who humans really are. After the meeting, the crew stood together outside the headquarters, looking up at the sky where ships came and went from orbit. Cultural liaison, Yunwoo said with a grin. That's a fancy title for someone who tears off body parts. Shut up, Haran replied, but she was smiling. Bora bumped her shoulder gently. You know what this means, right? You're going to be famous. People will recognize you everywhere we go. I don't want to be famous. I just want to do my job. Too late for that, Captain Tae Yang said. But fame isn't always bad. Use it. Let people see that humans are more than that one moment of violence. Show them the engineer, the problem solver, the person who builds things instead of breaking them. The next few months were busy. The Horizon's Edge underwent major upgrades. Bigger engines, better sensors, enhanced communication systems, and luxurious guest quarters for diplomatic visitors. Haran oversaw much of the technical work, ensuring everything met her standards. They hosted their first official diplomatic mission 3 months later. A delegation from the Fernan Collective, Pip's people, came aboard to learn about human engineering methods. Pip was among them, its whiskers twitching with excitement. Engineer Haran, it is wonderful to see you again. My people are very interested in your modular construction techniques. We hope to apply similar methods to our own colonies. Haran spent 2 weeks teaching the Fernan engineers, showing them how humans adapted construction methods for different environments. She found she enjoyed teaching, explaining concepts, sharing knowledge. It felt good to build bridges instead of breaking claws. More missions followed. The Draconians sent a military delegation to study human combat tactics. Haran worked with Hyunwoo to demonstrate how humans combine technology with strategy, using smaller forces to overcome larger ones. The Aquans invited them to their homeworld, a beautiful ocean planet where cities floated on the surface and dove deep beneath the waves. Haran helped them design new filtration systems combining human technology with Aquan biological engineering. And slowly, gradually, humanity's reputation began to shift. They were still the species that had hurt a Kik's diplomat. But they were also the species that shared knowledge freely, that approached problems creatively, that treated smaller civilizations with respect. A year after the incident, Haran received an unexpected message. It was from Velthar. She stared at the notification for a long time before opening it. What could the former speaker possibly want to say to her? The message was brief, translated from Kik's clicking patterns into standard English. Engineer Haran, I have spent this year in reflection. Among my people, the loss of a limb is shameful only when it results from one's own failings. I insulted your species. I threatened your crew. I believed myself superior when I was merely arrogant. You taught me that strength without wisdom is weakness. I will carry this lesson for the rest of my life. I do not ask forgiveness. I simply wanted you to know that I understand now what I did not understand then. Some species deserve respect not despite their differences, but because of them. Haran read the message 3 times. Then she wrote a reply. Speaker Velthar, I regret the pain I caused you. I wish we could have resolved our conflict differently, but I do not regret standing up for my people. I hope both our species can learn from what happened. Perhaps someday we will meet again under better circumstances. She sent the message and wondered if she would ever receive a response. She never did, but somehow that felt right. Some things didn't need further words. 2 years after the incident, the Galactic Council voted on humanity's status. The debate was intense, broadcast across thousands of worlds. Some species still had concerns about human aggression, but more spoke in favor of full membership, citing humanity's contributions to Council technology, their diplomatic successes, and their willingness to learn. The vote passed. Humanity was no longer provisional. They were full members of the Galactic Council. Haran watched the announcement from the Horizon's Edge, which was docked at a trading station near the Andromeda Gateway. Her crew gathered around her, cheering and celebrating. We did it, Bora said, tears in her eyes. We actually did it. Humanity did it, Captain Tae Yang corrected. Millions of people working toward this moment. Diplomats and engineers, scientists and soldiers. everyone who showed the galaxy what humans could be. But it started with you, Captain, Hyun-woo said. With this crew. With one engineer who refused to back down. Harin shook her head. It started long before me. With the first humans who looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. With everyone who worked to build ships and stations and colonies. I was just the one who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Or the wrong place at the wrong time, Bo-ra joked. Maybe both. 3 years after the incident, Harin stood once again in a negotiation chamber, but this time it was different. This time she was there as an observer and advisor, watching a new generation of human diplomats work with alien species. The negotiation was between humans and the Kix Dominion, discussing a joint military training program. The Kix representative was young, professional, and respectful. The human diplomat was skilled and patient. They worked together, finding common ground, building trust. After the session ended successfully, the Kix representative approached Harin. Engineer Harin, I wanted to speak with you. I am Speaker Tix. We met briefly at Concord Prime 3 years ago. I remember. You helped negotiate the Tertian Belt Agreement. Yes, that agreement has benefited both our species greatly. Speaker Tix paused. I also wanted you to know that Speaker Velthar's actions led to significant reforms in Kix diplomatic training. We now teach our representatives to respect all species regardless of age or size. Your forceful lesson helped change our culture for the better. I'm glad something positive came from it. More than you know, the claw you took has been preserved in our cultural museum on the Kix homeworld. It sits beside a translation of your testimony before the council. Young Kix study it as a lesson in hubris and the importance of humility. Harin didn't quite know how to respond to that. Her act of violence had become a teaching tool for peace. 5 years after the incident, the Galactic Council commissioned a monument at Concord Prime. It was a simple thing, really. A circular platform with holographic projections showing significant moments in Council history. One of those moments was Harin's confrontation with Velthar, but it wasn't the violent part that was highlighted. Instead, the projection showed her testimony, her words about humans being animals who chose civilization, who chose cooperation, who chose to reach for the stars. Beneath the projection, a plaque bore text in dozens of languages. Strength comes in many forms. Wisdom is knowing which form to use. Respect is earned through consistent action. Let all who enter this council remember that every species, no matter how new or small, deserves dignity. Harin visited the monument during a routine stop at Concord Prime. She stood there for a long time, reading the plaque, watching her younger self speak those words over and over. Security Chief Cross found her there. The old reptilian had retired from active duty, but still lived on the station as a consultant. Still thinking about that day? He asked. Always, Harin admitted. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I'd made a different choice. You made the choice you could make in that moment, with the information you had. That is all anyone can do. Cross looked up at the monument, and look what came from it. New protections for vulnerable species, reforms in diplomatic protocols, changed attitudes across the galaxy, one action in one moment rippling outward through time. I just wanted him to stop insulting us. And he did. They all did. Cross turned to face her directly. You taught the galaxy a lesson it needed to learn. That beings who seem weak might be strong in unexpected ways. That newcomers deserve respect. That bullies can be stopped. At what cost? At the cost of one Kix's claw and your own peace of mind. A small price for such large changes. Harin wasn't sure she agreed, but she nodded anyway. 10 years after the incident, Harin stood in the engineering bay of the Horizon's Edge. Now much older and more experienced, she had trained dozens of alien engineers, helped establish construction protocols for joint human-alien colonies, and served as advisor on countless diplomatic missions. Her crew had changed over the years. Captain Tae Yang had retired, though he still contacted her regularly. Bora was now chief medical officer for the entire human diplomatic fleet. Hyun-woo ran a training academy on Mars. But Harin stayed with the Horizon's Edge, training new crews, sharing her experiences, building connections between species. A young human engineer approached her, nervous and excited. Engineer Harin? I'm Dal. I just graduated from the Colonial Engineering Academy. They assigned me to this ship. I can't believe I get to work with you. You're a legend. Harin smiled. I'm just an engineer who once made a difficult choice. Let me show you around the ship. And let me tell you the real story, not the legend. Because legends leave out the doubt, the fear, the wondering if you did the right thing. As she showed Dal through the engineering systems, explaining modifications and improvements, Harin thought about how far humanity had come, how far she had come. She was no longer the angry engineer who tore off a diplomat's claw. She was a teacher, a builder, a bridge between worlds. But she was also still that engineer. Still the person who stood up when standing up mattered. Still someone who refused to let her people be dismissed as animals. Both things were true. Both things would always be true. And maybe she thought that was okay.